What is going on, YouTube? Run Gun Sports back here with another video. Today is a big day. We are releasing our NFL mock draft for the 2021 NFL upcoming draft happening on this Thursday. Very excited for the mock draft, or for the NFL draft to come out, see the next generation of talent coming over from the college football level. And it's going to be an interesting draft this year. Obviously, we can assume Trevor Lawrence will be going first overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But other than number 2, it's not like one of those drafts we've had in the past where we know who the top 5 picks are going to be. So it's going to be a really interesting draft to watch. We just released our Browns offseason review video just on Friday. So if you have not seen that, go check it out. And leave a like down below, subscribe, follow our social media pages at Run and Gun Sports on TikTok and at runandgun_sports on Instagram. And with that being said, let's get right into the video. Alex Smith retires after 16 years in the NFL, 8 years with the 49ers, 5 years with the Kansas City Chiefs, and 3 years with the Washington football team. And he played 174 games, NFL Comeback Player of the Year this year, and a 3-time Pro Bowler. And he's a great story, and obviously had one of the more horrific injuries we've seen in recent history. Came back, and just him being out on the field, even though he wasn't putting up crazy stats or anything like that, is still very impressive. And we hope Alex Smith has a good retirement. He could be a great QB coach. Really was a mentor to Patrick Mahomes when his career was first starting. When he was first drafted, Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith for a year, really taught him all that he knew. And obviously Mahomes has turned out great and is still going to do very well in the NFL and has more years to come. Rumor has occurred after pictures leaked a photo of a trade the Packers might propose to the New England Patriots. The Packers might be interested in trading Jordan Love and their 29th overall selection in the NFL draft, and a 2021 fourth round pick for the Patriots' 15th overall pick. And if the Packers do decide to propose that trade to the Patriots, I honestly think that would be a really good move for them. You still get your first round pick, you just get it a little later, and you pick up Jordan Love, who's a first round talent, and obviously one of the more confusing picks in last year's NFL draft, and you get a fourth round pick. So I think that's a good move for the Patriots to take that if the Packers do decide to propose it. And a lot of people may be wondering who the Packers would select with the 15th overall pick if they acquired it from the New England Patriots. And I really think that they would select Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's a great player, and he's one of the better linebackers coming out of this class. And the Packers really didn't have much. Their defense was the reason that they didn't make it as far as they wanted last year. Fired their defensive coordinator, and I think that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah can be really consistent for that Packers team and help them get to the point that they want to be at. The Ravens have traded offensive tackle Orlando Brown Jr. to the Chiefs for a 2021 first round pick, a 2022 third round pick, a 2021 fourth round pick, a 2021 fifth round pick, and the Chiefs also received a 2021 second round pick and a 2022 sixth round pick. So recapping what the Chiefs send over: a 2021 first round pick, a 2021 third round pick, a 2021 fourth round pick, and a 2021 fifth round pick. Ravens send over Orlando Brown Jr., a 2021 second round pick, and a 2022 sixth round pick. And I think that the Chiefs, the Chiefs, I don't know who honestly wins this trade, to be honest. It's going to be hard to tell. That's a lot of picks that the Chiefs give up for Orlando Brown, but I really don't know why the Ravens would give up Orlando Brown. And Orlando Brown's a solid player. The Chiefs have had to let some of their star offensive linemen go due to not having enough cap space. And I think a lot of it is with Patrick Mahomes' contract being so much. And I think that picking up Orlando Brown Jr. is a huge move for them and a great move in my opinion. And they still somehow pick up a second and sixth round pick from the Ravens. So they're not losing everything, and they already have a very strong foundation to build off of, just making it to the Super Bowl last year. Now we are going to be switching gears into our NFL mock draft now. So let's get into it. The first overall pick in the draft this one's pretty obvious. Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, the quarterback, made the playoffs all 3 years of his college career as a freshman, beat Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide in the national championship, beat him by 28 points, 44-16 in a blowout victory, and a game that no one expected to be a blowout. Trevor Lawrence, freshman quarterback to win the national title, a true freshman quarterback, and then crazy, and that really, he took off since. He's two-time national championship appearance, and obviously 1-1, lost to the LSU Tigers in 2019. And in his 3 years at Clemson, he had 10,098 yards passing, 90 touchdowns, and then in the 2020 season, he had 3,153 yards passing and 24 touchdowns. Missed 2 games due to him having COVID-19, and a lot of people are expecting Trevor Lawrence to go first overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'd bet money on it, and it's going to be a good move. He's probably the best player coming out of this draft, and it can hopefully turn around the Jags' struggling team. New head coach. It's a fresh start for the Jacksonville Jaguars, truthfully, and they're going to need Trevor Lawrence to come in there and get going right away after having not very good quarterback play at all. With the second pick in the draft, the New York Jets, I think, will select Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU. In his 3 years at BYU, he had 7,652 yards and 56 touchdowns on his career. Very good stats there. And in 2020, 3,692 yards and 33 touchdowns. So obviously Zach Wilson had a huge year this year. Half of his career stats came from this year, both touchdowns and yards. So I think obviously the Jets, a lot of people were questioning whether they'd even select a quarterback with the second overall pick in the draft. And then once they did let go Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers, they kind of had no choice but to select a quarterback. And so I think Zach Wilson will be the second pick in the NFL draft. With the number 3 pick in the NFL draft, the 49ers, who traded up with the Miami Dolphins, I think they will be selecting Trey Lance, quarterback out of North Dakota State. Really, Trey Lance only had one meaningful playing year in 2019. He had 2,947 yards and 28 touchdowns. And that's really his career stats right there. And it's really, I honestly don't see the hype in Trey Lance. He had one good year, and he's playing in a below average conference versus Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, and Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. Those teams that those guys are playing are way better than the teams that North Dakota State are playing by far. And really, that's only 1 year. And I think it's not that hard to have one good year at the FCS level. And I just find it hard that Trey Lance is being as hyped up as he is. I don't think he'll have a good, successful NFL career. Neither will I think Zach Wilson will. They just don't play as tough as schedules as Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones and Justin Fields do. And so we'll see what happens there. With the 4th pick in the NFL draft, I think the Atlanta Falcons will select tight end out of Florida, Kyle Pitts. In my opinion, Kyle Pitts could be the best player coming out of this draft. He's so versatile, he's so big, he's fast, and he goes up and gets the ball. He's very consistent. In his 2 years with the Florida Gators, in his 2 years of playing, he had 100 receptions, 1,492 yards, 18 touchdowns, and in 2020 he had 43 receptions, 770 yards, and 12 touchdowns. So great year for Kyle Pitts, and I think that the Atlanta Falcons, they do have a very strong receiving core already, Calvin Ridley and obviously Julio Jones, but they really don't have a strong tight end, and I think that if they added them in, who their quarterback is, whether it's Matt Ryan, who may be washed, some may say, I think that he could distribute the ball to those guys without a problem. Even though he's a little older, I don't think it would matter, and I really think that them picking a quarterback at the 4th overall pick would be a terrible move. And I think that if they did, though, it would be Justin Fields. Maybe not, but I don't think that picking a quarterback up at the 4th overall pick would be a move. Matt Ryan, I mean, he won the MVP not a few years ago. He's not a bum by any means. He's a great quarterback. Everyone has a bad year, and with COVID-19, it threw everyone off. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Kyle Pitts does do if he goes to the Atlanta Falcons, which I think they definitely should. With the 5th pick in the NFL draft, I think the Cincinnati Bengals will select Penei Sewell, tackle out of Oregon. We just talked about the Bengals about a week ago in our Bengals offseason review. Heard me say this a few times. even though the Bengals really need receivers, and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, obviously a lot of people want to see that. But do you want Joe Burrow to tear his ACL or get hit as many times as he was in his first 10 games with the Bengals and risk him not being able to play football again due to a freak accident injury? I think that you'd rather play it safe, take Penei Sewell, and I just think that that's going to be the best move for the Bengals to select Penei Sewell, a very good player out of Oregon, and it would be really a disservice to Joe Burrow if they picked up Jamar Chase. It would be a good move, but I think Penei Sewell is a great move. With the number 6 pick in the draft, the Miami Dolphins, in my opinion, should select Jamar Chase. One-time national championship, opted out of the 2020 season, and in his career at LSU is two years of playing time, 107 receptions, 2,093 yards, and 23 touchdowns. Really, second place to Devontae Smith and touchdowns in a single season, with 20 of them in the 2019 season. Had a great year, obviously a huge part of that LSU successful national championship team, one of the greatest football teams to ever play. And the Dolphins looking for receivers. A lot of people thought that maybe they'd pick up Devontae Smith to connect with Tua Tagovailoa, but I think that a lot of people don't think Devontae Smith's size is going to translate to the NFL, which I really think is a bad argument. But from what I'm hearing, and Jamar Chase being ranked the number 1 receiver in this class by a lot of people, I think the Dolphins will probably select him. But with the number 7th pick, Devontae Smith, I think, will be going to the Detroit Lions in his 4 years of playing time. Obviously, his first year of playing college football came in, made the infamous national championship catch for the win in overtime versus Georgia. His 4 years, he had 235 receptions, 46 touchdowns, almost 4,000 yards, 3,965, a 2-time national championship, a Heisman Trophy winner, first Heisman Trophy winner in 29 years. That was not, or for the receiver position. And just a great year for Devontae Smith. 2020, 117 receptions, 1,856 yards, and 23 touchdowns, putting him over the top of Jamar Chase for most touchdown receptions in a single season. And Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase, I still think Devontae Smith's a better receiver than Jamar Chase. His route running's great, his hands are insanely good, and his hand-eye coordination is second to none. I don't know why. I think that a lot of people are overlooking size as a factor right now for Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase. But Devontae Smith on the Lions with Jared Goff would be a very interesting duo to see, to say the least, in my opinion. I think I think it'll do good. Jared Goff just has to distribute the ball. We know he can distribute the ball, not as well as you'd like, but if he gets some good receivers, he will have no problem getting the ball to a guy like Devontae Smith. At number 8, the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion, will select quarterback Justin Fields from the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think that obviously Justin Fields transferred from Georgia after being beat out by Jake Fromm in fall camp at Georgia, and sat behind him, and then transferred to Ohio State. And Jake Fromm is a third-string quarterback on the Buffalo Bills right now, and for Justin Fields to get beat out by him, it doesn't really scream NFL talent to me at all, especially with Jake Fromm, the guy who beat him out in college, being a third-string quarterback. So that's really, I don't see the hype in Justin Fields. I do think that they'll select the Panthers will select him. In his 2 years of playing time at Ohio State, 5,701 yards, 67 touchdowns in total, and 2,100 yards in 2020, and 22 touchdowns. So he's a very talented player, but I don't think he'll translate to the NFL. I just don't think that he's that good enough to be an NFL type quarterback. At the number 9th overall selection in the NFL draft, the Denver Broncos, in my opinion, should select Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. In his career, he had 6.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 191 total tackles, and 99 solo tackles. That is in 2 years of playing time. So, very impressive stats from Micah Parsons. Arguably the best linebacker coming out of this draft. Very talented linebacking core from this NFL draft, and we'll see what happens if the Broncos select them. The offense has really been struggling, but they have a lot of young players, and he opted out of the 2020 season, and so we'll see if the year off for him was too much time off of football, or if he can come back and play at that elite level like we're used to seeing him play at. The number 10th overall selection, the Cowboys, I have him selecting Patrick Surtain, the cornerback from Alabama. Very talented player. His dad played for the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs, two AFC teams. I have him going to obviously a NFC team, and the Dallas Cowboys last year really struggled, and their defense was not very good at all. It was one of the worst defenses in the league, ranked they ranked bottom of the league in defensive backfield play, and just not a good year at all, obviously. And when Dak Prescott went off, that really derailed their season. And in his career, 3 years at Alabama of playing time, he had 111 total tackles, 78 solo tackles, 25 pass breakups, and in 2020 he had 12 pass breakups, 38 total tackles, 22 solo tackles, and 1 interception. At the number 11th spot, I have another Alabama player going to the New York Giants. That is wide receiver Jalen Waddle. 3 years at Alabama, 106 receptions, 1,999 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Very impressive career for Jalen Waddle, and he came in as a freshman. Not many freshman wide receivers from Alabama, besides Devontae Smith, come in and make an immediate impact like Jalen Waddle did, but he sure did. And in 5 games in 2020, he had 28 receptions, 591 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And the Giants really have no good receivers at all. They did sign Kenny Golladay. It's a very good move, but Jalen Waddle and Kenny Golladay would add a good amount of depth to that wide receiving core for the New York Giants to have Daniel Jones or whoever their quarterback is going to be throw them the ball, and I think that that's going to be a very solid receiving core. 2 younger guys playing in New York, and the future is going to be very bright if those guys stay around, if they pick Jalen Waddle. Moving on to another receiver, I talked about this receiving class, very, very talented receiving class. But number 12 overall pick, I have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Rashad Bateman, wide receiver out of Minnesota. In his career, 3 years of playing time, 2,395 yards, 147 receptions, and 19 touchdowns. And in 2020, he had 36 receptions, 2 touchdowns, and 472 yards. And the Minnesota Golden Gophers, really, when they brought in new coach PJ Fleck from Western Michigan, really brought in a new type of energy to the team that we've never seen from them in a while. And they looked very good. I think that the Eagles, obviously, they need weapons at receiver. They've drafted some really bad receivers. Jalen Reagor and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside have been complete busts, and they've picked them over some very talented NFL players that have turned out to be. And I think Rashad Bateman can be a very good player for them, and whoever their quarterback will be next year, whether it is Jalen Hurts or Joe Flacco. At number 13, I have the Los Angeles Chargers selecting Rashawn Slater, tackle out of Northwestern. Just protection for Joe Burrow, really. And I think that if that would go, Justin Herbert. Protecting Justin Herbert will go a long way of keeping him your franchise quarterback. Justin Herbert had a great rookie season, rookie of the year, and it's going to help him even play even better for the next season if they draft Rashawn Slater as a good protection piece for that team. Another tackle picked at number 14th and I have is Christian Darrisaw, tackle out of Virginia Tech. I have him going to the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that really it's for the run game. Dalvin Cook has been a great running back for that team, but they haven't had the greatest offensive line and blocking for Dalvin Cook. But I think that if they can get Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech, he's a very, very promising player, and I think that will really help the run game go a lot farther, and with the offense not being as good. But Kirk Cousins has found a way to get the ball to very young receivers, talented receivers. Justin Jefferson, who people thought were snubbed for the Rookie of the Year. I really do think that he was snubbed for Rookie of the Year. I think it should have been Justin Jefferson. A lot of awards these days are quarterback based, and that's just my opinion. Some people may disagree with me. It's definitely the hardest position to play, but I think that a lot of times when voters are voting for MVP or Rookie of the Year and other awards like that, they tend to be biased towards the quarterback. speaking of quarterbacks, at number 15, I have the New England Patriots selecting Mac Jones out of Alabama, the Davey O'Brien winner. And 1 year of playing in Alabama, he backed up Tua and Jalen Hurts for 3 years. But in his senior season, he had 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns, and both those at 4,500 yards ranks first in all of college football, and 41 total touchdowns ranks second. He just had a great year. A lot of people doubted him. They thought that Bryce Young coming out of high school was going to come in and start as a freshman over him. Mac Jones did not want that to happen. Clearly led his team to a national title. Really just a good story for him, and he's a team player. He sat behind Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa for 3 years, and I think that's really what NFL scouts have to look at, is whether a guy wants to start right away or whether he can sit behind the bench. And I think makes a lot of sense, especially with Cam Newton being resigned. If he struggles, they have Mac Jones to put in, and he'll be ready to play. I think that I've heard that a lot of people think that if they had to select a quarterback to play in an NFL game tomorrow, they would pick Mac Jones. He reads plays like a pro. He really reminds me of a Tom Brady type of guy, and I think that he's going to be very good at the next level in the NFL. He's wicked accurate. He's going to be very good. Speaking of another Alabama player, Christian Barmore, I have going to the Arizona Cardinals with the number 16th selection, and it's 2 years of playing at Alabama. He had 53 total tackles, 27 total tackles, and 5 pass deflections as a defensive lineman. Pretty impressive stat there, 5 pass deflections as a defensive lineman. And in 2020, he had 37 total tackles, 37 total tackles, 22 solo tackles, and 8 sacks and 3 forced fumbles, and 10 sacks in total in his Alabama college football career. At the number 17th selection in the draft, I have the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Trevon Moehrig, from safety from TCU. His 3 years of playing, he had 124 total tackles, 21 pass deflections, 85 solo tackles, 7 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. His 2020 season had 47 total tackles, 30 solo tackles, 9 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. And the Raiders, really, their defense is the reason that they're a playoff team. Their offense is very strong. Derek Carr I think, is one of the more overhated players in the NFL. He's still a solid quarterback, but he has no help at all from his defense. The receiving core is very good, and I think that, honestly, that their defense needs to improve, especially their defensive backfield. And they lost a lot of offensive lineman players this year, but you just see how young a lot of those guys are out there, and they just look so inexperienced for the Raiders. And hopefully Trevon Moehrig, if selected by the Raiders, can help play as an experienced rookie, which basically means that he can just play like he's like a good player coming out right away, because they really need that. Their defensive backfield struggles a ton. At number 18th selection, the Miami Dolphins, I have selecting Kwity Paye, from edge rusher from Michigan. In his 3 years of playing, he had 99 total tackles, 59 solo tackles, and 11.5 sacks. And in 2020, he had 16 total tackles, 12 solo tackles, and 2 sacks. And Miami Dolphins really already have a strong defensive line, but adding Kwity Paye could really boost them. A guy we mentioned earlier, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I have going to the Washington football team at the 19th overall selection. In his 2 years of playing for Notre Dame, he had 134 total tackles, 89 solo tackles, 7 pass deflections, and 10 sacks and 5 forced fumbles. So he's just an all-around player. He balls out. He can make plays, whether he's sacking the quarterback, making tackles, forcing fumbles, or sacking. And in 2020, he had 41 solo tackles, 60 total tackles, and 1.5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. He had a very great season last year, and the Washington football team trying to build up a very good defense, which they already have, but adding Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah could be that final piece to the puzzle that they may need to make a deeper playoff push than last year. Greg Newsome, the second cornerback from Northwestern, I have going to the Chicago Bears. In his 3 years of playing at Northwestern, he had 71 total tackles, 55 solo tackles, 24 pass deflections. A huge cover corner, as you can tell by 24 pass deflections. The Bears, their secondary is not very strong, but adding Greg Newsome would be big. In 2020, and he had 4 games, was injured. Unfortunately, he had 8 solo tackles, 12 total tackles, and 9 pass deflections. So just good. That's really impressive stats as it is right there. 9 pass deflections in 4 games. That's 2 a game at least. And so would be a very good addition for the Chicago Bears to add Greg Newsome. At the 21st overall selection, the Indianapolis Colts, I have Elijah Vera Tucker, tackle from USC. I have them selecting them. They really need protection. Carson Wentz does not want to have a repeat of what happened in Philadelphia, having no offensive line. And Elijah Vera Tucker looked extremely impressive in the USC Pro Day, and I thought he looked like the best offensive lineman coming out of the draft. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see what he can do in whatever team he lands on, because he will not let the quarterback get sacked or the running back tackled in the backfield. He's just that impressive of a player. At the 22 overall pick in the draft, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting wide receiver Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. And Elijah Moore is really someone that's kind of under the radar. Really, you don't hear much about him because you have Devontae Smith, Terrace Marshall, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, all those guys, Kyle Pitts, 5 of those guys who are better than Elijah Moore, and they all are in the same conference as him, so you're not going to hear much about Elijah Moore, but he's a very solid player. In his 3 years of playing at Ole Miss, he had 189 receptions, 2,441 yards, and 16 touchdowns. In 2020, he went off and had 86 receptions, 1,193 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Him and Matt Corral, that connection was just really good, and I can't wait to see what Matt Corral will do next year in the SEC, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. At the number 23 overall selection in the NFL draft, I have the New York Jets selecting Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. In his 2 years of playing time at Virginia Tech, he did not play in the 2020 season. He had 56 total tackles, 43 solo tackles, and 19 pass deflections and 6 interceptions. Huge cover corner. A lot of NFL scouts are not very high on him because he does not have very good techniques, but I think that the Jets, adding him to the Jets would be a very good pickup with Marcus May. They just franchise tagged him, and so I think that will be a good move if they pick up Caleb Farley with the 23rd overall pick in the NFL draft. That pick coming from the trade with the Seattle Seahawks involving Jamal Adams. With the 24th overall pick, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Walker Little, tackle out of Stanford, one of when the Steelers lost the Pouncey brothers, a big blow to their offensive line, and I think that Walker Little can come in and hopefully fill the shoes of Maurice Pouncey, and he was really injured throughout the year, and even though he's not going to be at the same position, Walker Little can really add some depth to that line that they miss without having Pouncey there. At the 25th overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I have selecting Tevon Jenkins, tackle from Oklahoma State, and I think that the Jaguars, really, whoever they draft, obviously it's most likely going to be Trevor Lawrence, but they need protection for him, and if they can pick up Tevon Jenkins, that's going to be a huge pickup for them to keep Trevor Lawrence healthy and not have what happened to Joe Burrow happen to Trevor Lawrence, because that would be really unfortunate, because I think Trevor Lawrence could possibly be better than Joe Burrow, but we'll see what happens. At the 26th overall pick, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Jason Owehe, edge rusher from Penn State. He's 3 years at the Penn State, 3 years of playing at Penn State. He had 63 total tackles, 37 solo tackles, 2 pass deflections, 7 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. 2020, he had 38 total tackles, 20 solo tackles, and the Browns really, after losing Sheldon Richardson, letting him go, and I think that would be a great pickup for them to add to that team. At the 27th overall pick, the Baltimore Ravens, I have selecting Jalen Phillips, another edge rusher. He played 2 years with UCLA before transferring for Miami, and now entered the NFL draft. In his 3 years of playing, he had 86 total tackles, 49 solo tackles, and 5 pass deflections, and 12.5 sacks. In 2020, he had 45 total tackles and 21 solo tackles and 8 sacks. So really a very impressive player. Jalen Phillips is very complete. We see him and Gregory Rousseau coming out of Miami, two great pass rushers, and I think that that's going to be extremely exciting to see how they do in the NFL. With the number 28th overall pick in the NFL draft, I have Terrence Marshall Jr., wide receiver at LSU, going to the New Orleans Saints. 3 years at LSU, had a great career there, also a part of that national championship team. They've both Alabama and LSU, the last two national championship winners, have let out some huge wide receiver talent and some great players, and it's going to be exciting to see what all those guys do at the next level. But in his 3 years of playing, he had 106 receptions, 1,594 yards, and in 2020 he had 48 receptions, 731 yards, and 10 touchdowns, 23 total touchdowns in his all of his 3 years. At the number 29th overall pick, I have the Green Bay Packers selecting Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback out of Florida State. His 3 years at Florida State, he had 93 total tackles, 69 solo tackles, 29 pass deflections, and 4 interceptions. So just a huge cover guy. He gets the ball, a ball-hawking cornerback, great player out of Florida State. And in 2020, he had 22 solo tackles, 30 total tackles, 3 interceptions, and 6 pass deflections. With the 30th overall pick, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, an edge rusher. His 3 years, 67 total tackles, 11 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and 37 total tackles. 11 interceptions as an edge rusher is just ridiculous. 2 pass deflections, 4 forced fumbles, and only 2 pass deflections. He had 4 forced fumbles in 2020, and that's just insane. 11 interceptions as an edge rusher. That's a defensive lineman, and just shows you how versatile he is. It's kind of a Kyle Pitts of the defensive lineman. In 2020, he had 22 solo tackles and 31 total tackles, 2 pass deflections and 8.5 sacks, and as I mentioned earlier, 4 forced fumbles. With the 31st overall pick, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Dylan Rands from North Dakota State, tackle, and obviously they need depth at offensive lineman with Orlando Brown Jr. being traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. Really kind of screws up their depth at offensive line, and picking up Dylan Rands from North Dakota State will help them out a lot, in my opinion. With the final pick in the first round, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl defending champs, picking Jamar Johnson. In his 3 years at playing at Indiana, at the safety position he had 61 total tackles, 45 solo tackles, 4 pass deflections, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 7 interceptions. And in 2020, he had 33 solo tackles, 41 total tackles, 4 pass deflections, 4 interceptions. And Jamar Johnson, obviously, I don't expect him to start at all, with the Buccaneers returning all 22 of their starting players, but it will add a lot of depth to that secondary that already has a ton of depth. So that will wrap it up for today's video. If you guys have not already, please leave a like down below and subscribe and share this to your friends, and thank you.